Mr. Potts has moved second reading of Bill 167, an act to amend the Consumers Reporting Act pursuant to Standing Order 98. The member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and what a great pleasure I have to stand up here today and talk about Bill 167 and the Consumer Reporting Act. This bill comes in a long line of consumer protection bills that I brought to this House since I was elected in 2014. You'll recall, Speaker, my very first bill, the tipping bill, came forward, and it was very early in my term. Well, Michael Prue, the previous member of Beaches East York, as the member opposite noted, had brought this bill forward 4 times, Speaker. In 4 attempts, he'd never been successful in bringing it forward. So I brought it forward early in my mandate and successfully. It unanimously passed in the House and agreed to by all House leaders to move forward on. And I was very proud of that fact that we brought that bill forward. What it did, Speaker, is it protected servers from having the owners of their business, whether the restaurant owners or a hair salon, from skimming the tips. And it was a very important protection of a consumer behavior bill. And then I also brought forward the daycare waitlist bill, Speaker. And in that bill, it said that daycare operators could not charge a waitlist fee that was unaccountable, was non-transparent. So daycare operators were not allowed to charge. It was costing residents in my community, $75, $100 for each daycare they put their child on a wait list for, and after $400 or $500 trying to get a daycare space for their child. And so we made that illegal in the province of Ontario as well. And of course, Speaker, you'll remember the Air Miles bill. About this time last year, I brought in the Air Miles bill. And the purpose of the Air Miles bill was to not allow loyalty points, reward points, to expire on the basis of time alone. And it was a period when Air Miles time was looking to expire all their points December 31st. And because we brought forward this bill and put uncertainty into the community about this, they withdrew. And we were so in all 3 cases, the bills were passed or acted upon by our government. And so here's a 4th bill. And I absolutely believe this bill, Speaker, deserves the full support of this House and our government to move it forward because it is, again, a very important consumer protection bill. So, Speaker, if passed, the bill will do 4 things. First off, it will force credit reporting agencies to provide up to 5 free credit reports every year if a consumer should ask for them. 5 free credit reports. And so they can also ask for it in any form that they want to receive it, be it by mail or electronically. And that's an important consideration. I'll return to it later. It also, Speaker, will allow a consumer to request of a credit reporting agency that they put a security freeze on their personal credit report. And I'll explain again more detail, but having a freeze means that no financial institution will ever advance credit against that consumer if there's a freeze on their report. Now, third, it will commit credit reporting agencies to have timely responses to consumer concerns, both in getting immediately back to them within 2 days and resolving a complaint within 15 days. And then finally, the last thing that this bill will do is it will provide free credit monitoring and a fraud alert services up until the year 2021 for all Ontarians who request it. Now, Speaker, I find it a bit rich that these credit agencies, Equifax, TransUnion, primarily in Ontario, are collecting all of your private information in all the transactions you do, in all your relationships with banks and credit card companies and major departments. They're collecting all that information without talking to you about it. They're simply collecting it. And then they are selling that information, Speaker, to a third party, back to the banks, back to the credit card providers, again, with no notification to you. And so unless you asked for it, you would have no idea what information they're sharing. Now, you are allowed to ask for it, but if you want that information in a timely manner, Speaker, they charge you for it. They are required by law to give it to you if you ask, but they won't give it to you, they'll give it to you in writing. And that sometimes takes a long time and it doesn't serve the purpose required. So I think it's really important that we stand up to these big credit agencies and say, you know what, this is personal data. You have an obligation to the people whose data you're collecting to treat them in a respectful manner. The timeliness of this bill is also very important. Speaker, you'll be aware that there was a major breach of personal data leaked from Equifax in the US that affected 100,000 Canadians. The timeliness of the response to Equifax, it was as if they were more interested in getting their public relations in line before they were interested in notifying people of these potential breaches. In fact, there's an allegation out there that some of the executives sold shares in their own company after the time that the corporation knew about the breach, although the claim is, in their defense, they say they didn't know anything about it at the time. So I think it's really important that we take a look at this bill and we take an opportunity to stand up to these credit agencies. So the first thing, as I said, it talks about free credit reports, 5 in a year, and don't use snail mail. You know, in the electronic age, it is very easy for them to push a button with your email account and give you back the reports you want as soon as you want. And there are some who think that you should be able to get as many reports as you want in a year, since it is your information. But I think out of reasonableness, Speaker, we're suggesting 5 in a year. How often are you going to really need to go back to that well to find out what your credit score is and take steps to improve it? So I believe 5 a year, and using whatever technology you want, they should be able to respond to it. Secondly, the freeze of credit. The security freeze of your credit is extremely important to protect against identity theft and fraudulent operators under your name getting credit and spending it on your behalf. It often happens, and it's happened to friends of mine, it's happened to previous members of this House, where an individual has got a hold of their personal information. They've gone to a big box store, Leon's, don't pay a cent event for a year, and using that information, they've gone and they've got Equifax or TransUnion to say, yes, this person has good credit rating, and this person who's stolen has fraudulently stolen the identity gets a credit card for that department store or for that big box store, runs up a bill of $10,000, $20,000 in equipment, and a year goes by before they're in breach of not paying it back. And by that time, there's no security video evidence of who made that purchase. And now the big box store comes back to that consumer whose identity was stolen, with whom was fraudulently obtained that credit, and says, you owe us $10,000 for the equipment. I didn't buy that equipment. How do you prove it? It was done with your credit card. And so by having a freeze on people's credit, a security freeze, it means that no institution will give credit to somebody because there's a freeze. Now, Speaker, you'd ask, well, what if I do need to go back to the bank and get another credit card, or get a loan, or get a mortgage? We're going to make sure, under this Act, within 48 hours, that you can lift that freeze, and that you can lift it and put it on at least twice a year. And I think that gives consumers the flexibility they need in order to protect their self against fraud and to manage their finances appropriately. So the third thing the bill does, I say, is timely response. I have heard from so many people about the difficulty they get in resolving a credit score problem with an agency. They don't get back to them. They don't get back to them electronically. It takes weeks and months to get a response. So the bill is going to make 2 specific requirements of a credit reporting agency. The first off, they will have to respond in 2 days to a consumer's concern. And then it puts the further obligation that they'll have up to 15 days to resolve the complaint. And I think that should be enough time for them to get back with a specific resolution. And if it's not satisfactory, well, the other avenues that individuals can take up to take on a credit report if they don't believe the information is there. And finally, Speaker, I want to talk about this free credit monitoring. Equifax and TransUnion make money for you going and spending money to get not just your credit report, but to get a fraud and monitoring alert service. I think it's upwards of $35. And so you put that on, you pay for it, and they will then, if someone comes in, they'll notify you that someone's asking for credit, and then you can respond, well, that's not me, and they won't get it. Now, in the US, when the breach happened, they offered all Americans 1 year of free access to reports, and up to, I think it's November 21st, a freeze on their credit report. That's just not good enough. So what I'm saying in this bill is up until 2021, the end of year 2020, because so much data has been breached and that there's a real risk to people, they have to do credit monitoring until end of 2020, so they will let you know if anybody is trying to access an account that's not yours or access opportunities to get financing for information that's not yours. So, Speaker, as I said at the beginning, this goes to the heart of consumer protection. And it's something that I've made on behalf of my representation of the good people of Beaches East York and of the province of Ontario a priority. Because I think it's really important that not only do we do the general business of the House here, where we do all the infrastructure investments, where we get a control of our fiscal responsibilities by balancing the budget, where we invest in transit and hospitals and schools, but that we also try to make people's lives better and easier. And there's nothing, Speaker, more stressful than having to deal with a credit agency which controls your capacity to buy a house, to get a credit card, to get a line of credit. If they've got information on you that isn't true, that it was another person named Speaker, for instance, and then they're denying you because that particular person named Speaker had bad credit, but it's not you, it's this other person named Speaker, well, that's a mistake. And you need to be able to go in there and correct it as soon as possible. So I'm very hopeful that my friends opposite, as I know and I'm pretty confident my colleagues on this side of the House will be very supportive of this bill, because I think it does address an important consumer. And I know at the heart of all members in this House, they have the best interests of Ontarians at heart. So, Speaker, on that note, I look forward to hearing some debate and responding to the very, very important concerns of my members opposite or the support that they have to it. Thank you.